Good afternoon. Welcome. Welcome you all. My name is Mauricio Rodas. I am the former mayor of Quito and currently a senior fellow at the Arsht-Rockefeller Foundation Resilience Center at the Atlantic Council and the co-chair of the Global Commission on Biodiversity by 2030. Urban leaders are confronted more than ever with complex trade-offs to increase their cities' resilience, efficiency, and quality of life. Rapid urbanization has happened at the expense of climate, nature, and the economy. Clearly, business as usual is no longer possible. What's coming next is that we will be seeing the most rapid urban expansion in highly biodiverse regions of the world, which makes a must for cities to rebalance the relationship with nature. By shifting investments to nature-based solutions for infrastructure, cities could develop a climate-resilient built environment while lessening the impact for biodiversity and also improving people's lives. Nature-based solutions are on average 50% more cost-efficient than gray alternatives and deliver 28% more value added. Yet, last year, only 0.3% of total urban infrastructure finance was spent in nature-based solutions. Much, much more needs to be done. This is a huge challenge for the whole world. How to return nature to cities, how to build biodiverse cities. And to shed light on this highly relevant issue, we have a fantastic group of speakers from all over the world, from the public and private sectors, from civil society and international organizations. I would like to introduce to you His Excellency, Mr. Iván Duque, President of the Republic of Colombia, Ms. Sheila Patel, Director for the Society of the Promotion of Action Resource Centers in India and a Schwab Foundation social innovator, Mr. Meg Hay, who's the Chief of the Executive Board of Mott MacDonald, and Maimouna Mott Sharif, who's the Undersecretary of the United Nations and Executive Director of UN Habitat. I would also like to give a special welcome to His Serene Highness, Royal Highness, Prince Albert II of Monaco. Thank you so much, Prince Albert, for being here. You're a great global leader in the fight against climate change, so we are delighted to have you with us. Let's start with you, Mr. President. So, as ambassador of the Biodiversity by 2030 initiative, you have championed a pioneering endeavor to acknowledge the importance of conserving and restoring urban ecosystems by highlighting as well the need to build multi-stakeholder collaboration for implementing nature-based solutions in cities. What was the aspect that inspired you to pursue this very important task? And what do you think can be achieved by 2030?
Well, thank you so much, Mauricio. It's a great honor to be here. Thank you, Sheila, Mike, and Maimouna, and thank you, Prince Albert. It's a great honor for me to be in this panel. So, if I may say this, almost 3 years ago, I was coming to Davos. It was the snowy Davos, not the green Davos that we're seeing today. So, it was 3 years ago that I came to meet Klaus Schwab, and I was thinking that being the president of the second most biodiverse country in the world had also to be connected with what is stressing nature. And it happens that people don't regularly know that the way we live in cities is the most precious threat to the whole knowledge of ecosystems management. Like people who live in Bogota don't regularly know that almost 80% of the water that we use in Bogota comes from high altitude ecosystems better known as páramos. So I came here and I wrote a note to Klaus and I said, what if we work on the concept of biodiversities, which is if we're having all this pressure in the urban areas, how can we make the urban areas leaders in nature-based solutions to protect nature? So we tried to put together two concepts. One is obviously carbon neutrality, and the other one is nature positive. So we had to combine both. And that's why we work on 10 pillars that I wrote them to explain them very fast. Energy transition, which is how do we expand our non-conventional renewable energies that benefit cities. Clean mobility, which was something that we also did in Colombia. We launched a bill, and we turned Colombia into the country with the largest cargo and urban transportation fleet run by electric vehicles, and that also improves the quality of air. We launched the circular economy policy in cities, where we tried to bring to the attention to the private sector the concept of reduce, reuse, recycle, and how we have been able to triple the recycling rate of Colombia, which was very low when we started the administration. It was 5%. Today it's 15%. And that has to be part of the debate, including waste to energy solution. Water sustainability. Where are the sources of water and what's putting the pressure on the sources of water? So when you have high altitude ecosystems, and this happens also in Ecuador, you have to protect those sources in order to maintain the flow of water to the cities. But the cities also need to have a better water management cycle. So that was another element that we included there. Green density. So we are all talking about having 30% of our countries as protected areas. And we will accomplish this year in Colombia. We'll have 30% of the Colombian territory, maritime territory, online territory, declared protected area. But I think we have to take the discussion to cities. So let's look at the green density that we have in specific cities. What is the percentage of green density in each specific urban area? And I think that places the discussion on where do we have to expand that green border inside cities. We have to put the river management discussion, because European cities were built looking at the rivers. It was not the case of Latin American cities. And it took a lot to sanitate the water. If we did not sanitate the water, the whole destruction of the ecosystem comes down the mountains, and it goes to the main river corridors of the country. So today, Bogota, for example, has a nice story to tell. It was not navigable. Now it is. And I think the sanitation process, in my opinion, is working much better. And two simple things. Green infrastructure, green buildings. So it comes from lighting to the materials to the way we get much energy, we use the energy in a more efficient way, and how, for example, we can bring the vertical gardens to be part of the way we plan cities. And last but not least, and this is also to connect all the elements with green financing. So as Colombia, we launched the first 2 green bonds of Latin America, but we're also the first country to launch the green taxonomy in Latin America. We need to have green taxonomies in cities. We need local governments to put all this set of policies and be able to deaggregate them so that they can issue green bonds, or that they can have green debt linked to the investments they're going to make in all this. In my opinion, this will end up putting the cities with an index. In all these 10 indicators, how are you performing? And let know to the whole country which is your line of action to become carbon neutral by 2050, but something that can be done earlier, carbon neutral by having 30% of the city with a greener environment, not necessarily a protected area, but at least surrounded by a minimum percentage of protected areas.
Thank you so much, Mr. President. As a former mayor, I cannot help saying how important it is to listen a president, the leader of a national government, highlighting the importance of cities to tackle climate change. Congratulations, Mr. President, for that. So, Sheila, you have been working for more than 38 years to alleviate poverty and to make sure that the poor in India have access to affordable housing. So you have become a symbol for social justice. How do you think nature and nature-based solutions can help cities to address challenges like climate change, but also raising income inequality?
So first of all, I want to thank all of you to have me on this panel. It's my privilege to be with all of you. And I want to bring to this discussion that whatever you say seems like a dream to me, because it happens in the formal city. It does not happen in the informal city. And I want to start off by saying that climate change is actually going to produce a volume of urbanization that we have not seen before, because long before things work out, we are going to face so many climatic challenges that more and more people are going to come to the big cities. And one of the challenges that we want to project is the metropolitanization of large cities. So metropolitan cities are going to have more and more satellite cities, and they're going to take over more and more of their rural areas. So already that is juxtaposed paradoxically against what you're looking at. What that's also going to do is address the challenge that we have seen from people who are championing nature-based solutions, that metropolitan areas should have 60% green cover in order to be the lungs of the metropolitan area. And yet, we have yet to see metropolitan regional authorities include that in their thinking and their discussions. So in Mumbai, we have the metropolitan region, which has 12 municipalities along with Mumbai. And we have this line of urban and rural, and there are, I just want to give an example, 2,000 small water bodies there. The tradition in India has been that because people living around those water bodies don't have sanitation, they become polluted. And it gives the city managers the right to shut those things down and concretize everything, to produce extension of the concrete jungle in which we live. So my first thing to you is to say what not to do. The other maladaptation in cities is the concretization of our cities. In most of the cities that not only I work in India, but the 33 other countries in Asia and Africa mainly that we are an affiliate of, called Shack Dwellers International, city managers are putting paver blocks, concretizing even the areas around the few trees they have in the cities. So you're talking about serious maladaptation that you have to get rid of before you talk about greening anything. The third thing, very important, is that the deficits in minimum development investments that are needed for 30 to 70% of people who live informally is not there today. So when you talk about water, you first have to give enough water to these communities. So the quantum of maladaptation, both in the form of not having given something for 3 to 4 generations of the poor, what that will mean to your strategy, and to get rid of all the systems. All our cities are water-based for waste disposal. We know that we don't have enough water, but we don't have enough innovation to produce alternate mechanisms to deal with fecal matter and drainage. So that science is not yet appropriated by our cities, even in the formal system, and we don't know when it will come to the informal system. And finally, issues of climate change which we are dealing with right now are extreme heat. Central India has 48 degrees centigrade today. We don't even treat it as a national climate calamity today. So heat, terrible winds, floods, rains are devastating informal settlements and cities. And we need to address that along with the embracing of a nature-based solution, because we also have to combat the challenges that nature puts to us. So for us, we see this as a double leap that we need from our governments and our communities. And all our communities are willing to work with their governments and their communities. And Maurizio and me are part of this campaign to deal with heat islands in cities. And we know how difficult it is to retrofit these situations properly. So thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheila, and thank you for bringing the issue of extreme heat to the table. Right now, India, Pakistan are suffering very much from that, and as you know, extreme heat kills more people than all other climate-driven hazards combined. and it is particularly severe in cities, so it is something urgent to address. Mike, so you have vast experience in designing infrastructure, all kinds of infrastructures for cities around the world. So in your view, how can we incentivize investment to unlock the benefits that nature-based solutions and nature-based focus can bring into urban infrastructure?
Yeah, thanks. I mean, I think it's clear, isn't it, that we should be thinking about nature-based solutions in everything that we do. Doesn't matter whether it's in the global south or the north or whatever. We must be thinking about it. But of course, nature-based solutions, they're not new. They've been around for a while. Sustainable urban drainage. You know, I was working on these sort of projects 25 years ago, dare I say. But lots more things now that you hear about. Pocket parks, are quite a trendy term that you hear. Of course, green roofs and blue roofs, and you know, in those cities that are close to the sea, bringing in mangrove trees to help protect the coastline. There are so many different ways to bring nature into our cities, and I think, you know, as the previous speakers have said, the advantages, the so-called co-benefits of this are really well rehearsed now. We know what those benefits are, but how do we do it? In the globe, we spend trillions of dollars every year on infrastructure. Imagine what we could do if we just thought about every one of those projects, those interventions in terms of nature, as well as also the economic benefit that infrastructure can bring. And so for me, you know, there are ways to incentivize investment, but I think the investments that we're already looking at, already planning, we should be making those investments work harder. We should be thinking about the outcomes that can be achieved, whether it's a railway or a road or whatever it might be. Don't just think about it as moving people from A to B. Think about how we can use it to bring nature into the cities. And I'll give one. It's really difficult to think of examples that are relevant to all of us, actually. So I'll use one close from home, which is in the north of England. So the city of Leeds suffers badly from flooding. And although there have been many things done to try and improve the flooding in Leeds, it still exists as an issue. And so the West Yorkshire Combined Authority, which is an authority which coordinates, and this is the important point here, it coordinates what lots of other authorities do in the Leeds area. They came up with a plan to bring nature-based solutions into flood management. And so this was about natural flood catchment management. And but the really clever thing that they did this with a relatively small budget of £1.7 million. So this was something from their growth budget, but they used that as a catalyst to then bring in not only the other local authorities that were the local councils where the flooding was taking place, but they also brought in charities. They brought in the National Trust, the Environment Agency. They brought in the Woodland Trust. And I can name lots of these organizations, many of which were community-based organizations, to work together to think how they could actually prevent this flooding, but do it by working with the rivers and by bringing more natural environments to those streams, by re-wetting the peatlands up above the city. So for me, that was just a classic example of this wasn't about finding extra money to bring in nature-based solutions, because the solution that they found was cheaper than it would have been to design and build a lot of concrete to prevent the flooding in the city. So for me, if there's one message I'd like to get across, it's let's make our investments work harder. Let's think about the outcomes that we're trying to achieve from infrastructure investment beyond economics, and think about people, think about the environment, think about well-being.
Thank you so much, Mike, and thank you for highlighting how, you know, by investing in a wise way, probably the same amount of money we are investing today, we can get great outcomes for nature. Thank you so much for that. Maimuna, so you are an urban expert. So you are an urbanist by training. You were a mayor, a very successful mayor, and now you are the executive director of the UN agencies that runs cities and urban development. So in your perspective, how can we help urban leaders to prioritize the integration of nature-based solutions into urban planning? And how does the new urban agenda becomes a meaningful framework for achieving that goal?
Thank you, my friends. I met him in 2016 in Quito during the Habitat Tree. So that's why I met Moria. So thank you so much for having me here, and thank you for that questions. When you ask about urban planners, let me put myself. I was a mayor before. Before mayor, I was a junior planner, struggling to plan a city called Penang. Yeah, and then I became a mayor for 7 years before I joined UN Habitat. All this experience, the challenges that I faced as a junior planner, as you said, advice to urban planner, and as a mayor, and now as an ED of UN Habitat, I have to make a difference. Otherwise, there's no point I'll be here. I have to make a difference. So what is, you look into the new urban agenda, actually there is a very comprehensive agenda, even include the protection of nature in the new urban agenda. So, and then UN Habitat, I would say that UN Habitat is the UN agencies dealing with local action. We are working together with member states to promote, to translate the policy into action, action into practice, and have the outcomes, the positive outcome that we would like to get. Let me go back to your question, the advice to the urban planners. First advice, I would like to say that I want to promote that think local. People used to say think global, act local. Now, I disagree with that. Think local, you know your issues locally. How to know the issues locally? You have to work together with the people. Think local. Then if you cannot find the solution locally, act global, but coming to the World Economic Forum, because it's not easy to come here, so at least, yeah. So it's coming to the World Economic Forum, going to the World Urban Forum in other forum, and attend training. But once you think global, then when you learn globally, you come back to the city and apply local. So that is one thing. And from my experience, also I want to use the issues of flooding. At that time, when I was a mayor. And many of the urban planners and the engineers, whenever they submit plan, whenever they see stream, whenever they see rivers, they want to close it and make it into concrete drain. Why? They threw the formula of the calculation. They said the water velocity will be going very fast to the river, to the sea, and it will reduce flooding. This doesn't work. From my real experience, it doesn't work. As a junior planner, I cannot do anything because I have a mayor there. When I was a mayor, I reversed the guideline saying that if you see a river, if you see a stream, let it be natural. Then it came out now, lately we came out about sponge city. We already have the nature-based sponge city at the earlier age. But why we convert it into open drain and become at the end of the day, open sewer? Then we have to clean up because rubbish is inside. Then clog, then flooding. So I reversed to say that all the river, all the stream, you have to maintain it at ease and improve it, have the aesthetic value, where people bring the children to touch the water. Then when they touch the water, they know that the water is very good, very clear, and then they won't pollute it. So it's advocacy starting from the small. Then second example that I want to give two examples. One as the mayor, one as an ED of UN Habitat. Second example is when we had 6,000 acres in Penang, you want to do eco-city. You can Google eco-town of Batu Kawan. That's why I was involved. And it's 6,000 acres. The first thing that we need is that to understand what you mean by nature-based or eco-city, and where we work together with all the other stakeholders, not only cities, but stakeholders, academia, students, private sector. We form a committee called SPEED, surveyor, planners, engineer, architect, developers, to speed up your approval of plan in the city. So we use that to come up with the guidelines. So meaning that is stakeholders to come up with the guideline criteria before we even start planning. What type of outcomes that we would like to see from these 6,000 acres? What type of development that you want to do? What type of technology, nature-based solution? From 10% of open space, I increased to 40%. You want to develop in this area? 40%. Another KPI is that I need to bring the Fortune 500 companies into that area. But I managed to bring 13. Given asked me 10. But it's a long story, but there's no time. But what I mean here is that we need to have a stakeholders engagement, people-centered, then we can get the solution. Second is on the new urban agenda. I just came back from New York on the 28th of April. I realized that in 2018, not many head of state or head of government or president or prime minister or ministers talk about the implementation of the new urban agenda. They talk about climate change, they talk about Paris Agreement, they talk about Addis Ababa, all that. But if you don't make your cities right, how can you pump a lot of money on the climate change, on the climate adaptation? You have to make your cities right through integrated planning, through implementation of new agenda. Due to that, a paper was prepared and approved at the General Assembly on the 28th of April. Over 90 plus member states came to the General Assembly and committed to say that they want to implement new urban agenda and using also nature-based solution. So I think this is very, very important for us to look into that, because it's only 32 reports submitted to UN Habitat on the implementation of new urban agenda out of 193. That means you are not serious implementing the new urban agenda. So they said that, no, Maimuna, I'm not serious, but because we don't have the capacity. Then they came to me and said, okay, you give us the capacity, give the training, how to prepare the report. Then another question is that I would like to share with you is regarding the resilient work that we have as an ED of UN Habitat. I went to Mozambique. After 1 month after the cyclone Idai, all the houses all on the ground. And I spoke to the late mayor. He passed away due to COVID. The late mayor of Beira. He said, Maimuna, I know that area which all collapsed, I know that shouldn't be a housing there because it's below sea level. But I don't have the capacity, I don't have the plan to say that, to say that no to that. So we have to prepare their master plan. And I'm very happy last month Mozambique have the first National Urban Forum working together with us. So I think that the integrated approach is very important, and now we are also putting up the resilient guideline together with the nature-based solutions. So I think this new urban agenda, I would like to call upon the leaders here, please look at the new urban agenda which approved in Quito, in Ecuador, and implement it and make your cities right, because the sustainable urbanization will link to the problem of climate change, will link to the problem of urban heat, will link to the problem, and use the nature-based solution because it's already there. It's just that we need to step back and rethink how to move forward. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you, Maimuna. Thank you for reminding us the importance of the new urban agenda as a framework for everything that we are talking about here. Thank you for that. Prince Albert, we want to take the opportunity of having you here with us today to ask you to provide some ideas, insights, comments from you on this very important topic.
Well, thank you very much. Thank you for allowing me to say a few words, and thank you to a wonderful panel. There's been some already wonderful ideas and wonderful statements. But I just want to give you the maybe it's interesting the point of view of a small city-state like the Principality of Monaco, and what the challenges that we've had to face. Of course, on a very different scale than any large city and any large country, but it's probably interesting to see some of the same challenges. And some of those challenges, of course, were because I'll just give you the size so you can maybe a lot of people don't know the size of Monaco. It's only 2.5 square kilometers. It's a population of 39,000, home to some 140 different nationalities, so we're very cosmopolitan and very open. But and our main challenges was to balance we've got some old buildings, some historical landmarks, and of course a galloping push for urbanization and for new buildings. And so to try to balance that and to try to implement nature-based solutions in everything that we do in architecture and planning was difficult to put up and to set up in the beginning. But of course, we worked on different things, and we insisted, and my father, well before me, insisted that for the need for green spaces, even if you're a small urbanized country. We're the most highly dense, the country with the highest population density in the world, as you know. And so he insisted on our green spaces, and I did also, and I think we're a little over 20% of green spaces in Monaco right now, which in itself is I think is okay. We're in an average, but we're working, of course, always to expand that, because it's not only good for the environment, but it's to go back to well-being. It's an essential part of quality of life. And then we worked. President Duque, you mentioned clean mobility. That was one of our big drives to try to encourage people by different incentives to go toward clean mobility. And not only the Monaco government set an example, and now almost the entire fleet of government vehicles are either electric or hybrid. But we gave, of course, different incentives, not only for companies, but for private citizens to go toward the purchase of electric or hybrid vehicles. And these incentives could total almost 30% of the purchase price of the vehicle. And so that's why we're able now to announce that we have over 12,000 vehicles in Monaco. That's no, it's 5,000. No, it's 12,000 vehicles. So it's a pretty big percentage of our total fleet of vehicles. And so all of these things combine, and it's not just one aspect, of course, as we've already said. It's a combination of all these aspects and of the implementation of different plans and different mechanisms that we can move forward. And so we now the challenge is to, because we have to provide housing for our local population, for Monegasque citizens, and the plan is that we have to provide a little over 100 new apartments a year. That is also becoming increasingly difficult, not only to find spaces, but to retrofit some older buildings and to make them into livable spaces with, the setting up and the incorporation of nature-based solutions in those different developments in architecture. And so we hope to meet these challenges in the future. But because we want to be on target with our pledges, as many countries have along with us, a 50% reduction of CO2 emissions by 2030 and carbon neutrality by 2050. And we hope to achieve that well before then. But so, of course, the scale is vastly different than everything, than all the cities that you mentioned. But it is a challenge for everyone. But if we pull everybody, all the stakeholders together, and if we pull all the different agencies and led by the government, of course, but if we can get everybody on board, like we've been able to do on the small scale, well then we will be able to meet these targets and to meet these goals that we've set up for ourselves. So thank you very much, and thank you for all these different perspectives that we've had today.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Prince Albert, for sharing with us some of the challenges that city-state like Monaco faces in terms of protecting biodiversity and implementing nature-based solutions. I would like to open the floor for questions. We'd love to hear from you, ideas, comments from what you have heard. Please.
Jan van Akker, I'm from Belgium, but I work in the emerging markets, and I have a question for the politician. Mr. President, Mr. Duque, I was in Bogota 2 weeks ago, and I know that you know, when I look at Medellin with lots of public transport, and Bogota where there's still development, how do you get people as a politician to really switch so that you have more livable cities? And how do you do it in a way that you can get re-elected as a politician next time? Because it's not easy in many places across the world. So I'm just curious.
Well, the first thing is that, you know, I have the only job in Colombian politics that does not have re-election. So there's re-election for the mayors, the governors, the Senate, the councils, but not the presidency. So I can speak more freely about this. I think the most important thing happening in cities, and the Bogota city is an example. Bogota is a city that was not well planned for the size of city it is today. So that makes life of cities more complicated, because you not only have to plan the growth of the city, but you have to amend all the bad decisions that we're taking back in time. And especially because Bogota is a city that is located almost 2,600 meters above the sea level, and it gets all the water from a high altitude ecosystem. Bogota and the way Bogota behaves can not only affect the páramos, but it can also affect the Amazon ecosystem. Because even though they seem too far away, both ecosystems are interconnected. So it's not just planning, but it's thinking on 5 main things. We need to get rid of more cars over time and make people use public transportation more. So we have spent almost 100 years talking about the Bogota Metro, and finally in my administration we got the money and the construction began. The second thing is we're working on the second line. We're working on 4 arteries for the city to improve mobility, but also looking towards a more greener kind of transportation. That's why we have this big transportation fleet for the public service, which is electrical. But the other 3 things that are happening in Bogota that people are getting conscious is quality of air. Because, I mean, you can theorize as much as you can, but when people start suffering from the smog, then you get people more conscious about. And I think that started making a big change. And something that is going to happen this week, on Thursday, will be in the exit of Bogota, putting the first trail for rails system in Colombia. So we had some communities, some locations where people used to bike to Bogota in the middle of the streets in a very dangerous way. And we decided to get rid of some rails that we no longer use and create a trail that is going to be 50 kilometers long. And people will safely be able to use the bicycle to get to Bogota, and then they'll get into the Bogota cycling structure that we have. Why do I consider that very important? Because Bogota in 30 years became one of the top 5 cities in the world where people use bike as their regular transportation. That is another big thing that got people involved. And the third element, and it's something that we haven't talked here about, And I think that's the next stage. You have a new generation that is feeling not only compromised, but that is feeling motivated to act against climate change. And I think this is the next step of urban citizens. How do people in cities get to measure their own carbon footprint? What is my own carbon footprint? How much water am I consuming? How many gasoline am I consuming? How many hours a day do I use the electricity? How much hot water do I use? And if we start using technology and AI techniques and we get individuals to be able to monitor their own carbon footprint, I think this is also going to make life in the cities easier. And why do I consider this important? Because we launched a program with the Minister of Environment that is here called Savia, that is an open online school of environmental policies. And we got thousands and thousands of youngsters just in Bogota wanted to get involved. Tree planting, air solutions, protecting the Bogota River, and I think that all makes sense. You need the urban citizen, you need the transportation, and you definitely need to go greener in the quality of air. Those three things, in the case of Bogota, are happening right now, and is part of amending what was done in the past, but part of doing a better planning for the city in the future. Thank you.
Please, Mike.
Just build on that a little bit. I think the Trails for Rails thing's brilliant, by the way. It's this whole concept of if a certain infrastructure becomes redundant for whatever reason, think very carefully about what you're going to kind of replace it with. We're going through post-COVID kind of, well, I'd like to think a bit of a tipping point at the moment where people are thinking differently about how cities are used. People are thinking differently about their working relationship, their commuting and so on. And with the electrification of transportation, maybe we're going to start seeing different patterns of transport, which will free up space, free up roads, free up some of the rail space that we'd had. This is an opportunity for us to bring greenery back into our cities, and just to remember again, the nature-based solutions. Ultimately, it is about doing something that's great for biodiversity. It's great for people's well-being. I think we've got an opportunity around the corner, and it will be a challenge for us though, because when space becomes available in cities, we all know what happens, don't we? The value of that land is huge, and so to be able to actually respond to that and think, no, let's think about nature-based solutions first.
I would like also to include the work that we are doing now. At the moment that we are talking about nature-based solution. We are also part of the nature. Yeah, we are human being, part of the nature. So what actually transformative change that we individually do? So I think that I take the example of we launched the Waste-Wise Cities initiative. And rather than looking at the technology, how to manage the waste, we look at how to reduce the waste generation. To reduce the waste generation to circular economy and so on, that by bringing in the people towards the element of zero waste. By using the advocacy, using the small children, using the community, to reduce their waste. Because I remember during the town hall like this, one of the women stood up and said that waste has no wing, waste has no leg, waste has no hand. But why waste is in the drain and clog the drain and become flooding? Human is the culprit. It's in the town hall. So I think we also have to play our role and looking at how we can use this instead of not the big technology which many cities cannot afford. We use the people. People are the nature, the solution. So I think this, by using that, it will reduce the waste generated, and then you will come out to few communities have become zero waste. They don't want to see the compactor from the cities to come into their neighborhood. So that this is something that I think is we have to start individually, family, community, and then of course the country. Thank you. Over to you.
Thank you so much, Maimuna. Well, we have heard great insights from our speakers. President Duque shared with us his vision, which highlights the importance of collaboration between different levels of government to build biodiversities. He shared with us ideas like, and I love it, a mechanism for people to think about their personal footprint, carbon footprint. That's brilliant, Mr. President. We heard from Sheila some great new terminology. We heard about metropolitanization and concretization as processes that are happening in cities and are harming nature. We heard from Mike about the importance to be aware of the co-benefits of implementing nature-based solutions for infrastructure, something that sometimes we overlook. And from Maimuna, reminding us how relevant it is to look back at the new urban agenda as an already existing framework to bring nature back to cities. The challenge is huge, but after listening these great ideas and insights, I am pretty sure that we will be leaving this room much more optimistic. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you for being here.